So we're going to look at today's world. We're going to look at visual studies and concentrate on this section on today's world. Now, the written examination takes 30% of the overall marks, and this is divided into 3 sections, and all questions will rely on the learner's understanding of visual studies and their critical and creative use of visual language to analyse artworks. Now, what will your examiner look for? How much detail, for example? This is determined by the context, the manner in which the question is asked, and the number of marks assigned to the answer in the examination paper. So in other words, the requirements for this may vary from year to year, and the question is the one to look out for and break down the question and see how much you feel they're looking for. And what style of writing should you use, and what amount of value is given to the writing? Words, expressions, and phrases must be used in context. They must not be contradicted. And where there is evidence of incorrect use or contradictions, the marks may not be awarded. So in other words, clear and keeping to the point, and not saying one thing in paragraph 1 and another in paragraph 2. Should you use sketches? Well, these may be used to answer any question. So if it suits you to use sketches, then you do. And sketches can be a very important way of answering. They can fill out the information better in some cases. So the sketches will be reviewed as part of the material on which the mark is based. Note. Now you should note that your examiner will be advised not to penalise skillful brevity and not to reward unwarranted length. In other words, if your writing is clear, short, but to the point and makes the point clearly in a short way, it will be marked. If you just, the use of language going round and round and round and round without making a good point, it doesn't get any better. Now we're looking at Content Area 3, which is Section A on the exam, Today's World, for 50 marks. That question brings 50 marks. And this is based on a study of a range of art-led experiences that may have been experienced locally, nationally, internationally, or virtually. In other words, it's whatever you have seen and done. Questions will relate to the following sections of focus: art as theory and thinking, art as processes and media, art as a social commentary or commentator, and art and the environment. Now, key point here, that you as a student may have experienced art Now, key point, students may experience art in any number and in very individual ways. So you as a student may have experienced art completely differently to students in another part of the country. So you as a student may have experienced art in one way, and somebody living in another part of the country may have experienced it in a very different way. So you work from your own experience, in other words. Now here is the marking, the descriptor for the short questions. And what they'll be looking for are skills of critical literacy and contextual inquiry to decode, decipher, and make meaning from a range of stimuli or questions. And then the response, or your answer, where it shows evidence of the following: a limited understanding, application, limited presentation, etc., will be 4 to 6 marks, and that's low. These are, So the marks there Out of 4, a low mark will be 1, and out of 5, a low mark will be 1, and out of 6, a low mark will be 2. So you're hoping that at least, and as a moderate mark there, it'll be 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 from the 6. And then the high will be 4, 4 to 5 or 5 to 6, in other words 6 full marks. For a thorough understanding of the requirements of the question, a thorough application of accurate and well-formed practice and knowledge and understanding to new and unfamiliar situations, a thorough level of problem solving in relation to visual studies and the practical application of art, consistent and well-informed analysis, interpretation and evaluation, thorough presentation of accurate and relevant arguments, explanations and ideas based on evidence, a thorough presentation of a coherent and focused answer, thorough, accurate and relevant use of visual art terminology and or sketches. In other words, a clear answer with a good deal of knowledge and a good deal of analysis. They're the high marks. They're the high achieving answers. So we're going to look at question 1 from 2024. And the paper on 2024 showed Mina Grove by Anne Quinn on the accompanying sheet. And it asks you to describe this painting using the following headings: composition, perspective, colour. And then it asked, what do you think this painting is about? Give reasons for your answer. So to look at the composition, perspective and colour, first of all, the composition. The composition shows that the painting there, a quick look at the painting shows the composition as being divided more or less in half, with the horizon line there making a middle across the painting where the roof of the house is just cutting through that horizontal line. And this is linked then by the pathway here, which follows the perspective getting narrower as it goes up around the house, and that very neatly brings our eye to the house, and then we focus on the light colours in the sky, and this contrast then with the warmer colours, and this contrasts with the greens and yellows of the foreground. The mountain in the distance, some may recognise it if you live in that part of the country, and the bush on this side both form what might be considered a frame on the painting, and also located to bring our eye once again through the perspective of the path going up to the house itself. Now, what do we think this painting is about? Well, I know what I think it's about. So what do you think it's about? Now we see there a figure in the distance, and we see that the figure seems to be collecting wood, and we also see that the house is in a very poor shape. The roof is broken, the door is falling off, and the windows are gone. So it suggests a story. And my story is one, your story is another. It may relate to the famine, possibly. If you think it does, then that's what you talk about. And the answer for that question, the marks, the description of the painting using the given headings, composition, perspective and colour. The total marks there are 6, and hopefully you will have described each one, giving certain thought to the composition, the perspective and the colour, to get 6 marks. Now your interpretation or suggestion as to what the painting is about and your reasons given for that will hopefully get you 4 marks. Now question 5 for 10 marks again is a written question without an illustration this time. This question can be very good because it gives you an opportunity to focus on something that you may have experienced. So in this case it asks, why is the role of the curator in a public gallery so important? And what makes a visual art exhibition popular with the general public? Explain your answer. Now, the definition of a curator is someone who's in charge of objects or works of art in a museum or gallery, and curators also develop ways in which objects and artworks can be interpreted through exhibitions, publications, and events. The Crawford Gallery. Now, to find it's always worth searching, and in this case I put in a search for something interesting relating to a curator, and I found that the Crawford Gallery have a very interesting and the Crawford Gallery give a very interesting overview of a curator, and they give it in a PDF which you can download or print, and it's there to look at. The Crawford Gallery at the moment is closed, but they have a really good section on Learn and Explore. So to look at the role of a curator has many roles in the Crawford Gallery. Curators develop interesting ways in which artworks can be interpreted through exhibitions, publication or events. Curators work with colleagues in areas such as education, research, conservation, design and marketing. A curator organises displays of gallery collection and loaned works from other collections or directly from an artist. An exhibition communicates with the public in a way that may inform, educate, entertain and inspire. Now, the work of a curator, organising exhibitions, working with artists, identifying and researching artworks and ideas, collaborating with other institutions, historians, scientists and other specialists or technicians, developing ideas for exhibition, organising and interpreting artworks to present to various audiences, researching, compiling and preparing written information about the collection. Now, the Crawford Gallery also presents in that section a case study, and the exhibition here is Seen and Not Heard, and once you read on through it, you see what the curators were trying to do here. And it's a thematic exhibition examined the representation of children in artwork from the 18th century to the present. And all these came from the Crawford Gallery's own collection. So the power was organised in 3 loose sections: power, perception and play. The curators wanted to mount an exhibition which examined how children have long been an important subject in art, whilst also encouraging the audience to reflect on their own ideas of childhood and on the place of children in society today. And you can see in the illustration there, people looking at the paintings coming from the Crawford's own collection, and we can expect that this would have been a very popular exhibition with both young people and adults, and so this is how the curators would have chosen those works for the public to engage with. And Seen and Not Heard, of course, is what children would have been expected to do in the 19th century. Now, the answer here, the discussion of why a role of a curator is important. You must tell us why. Having found out quite a bit about a curator, now you tell us why they're important. And your discussion of what makes a visual art popular with the general public. Your explanation for the answer will hopefully get you 5 marks. So, having looked at all of those, hopefully it'll make your whatever.